Today is February 9th, and this is the Campus FM Technology Association's 2016 Facilities Geospatial Technology Showcase. I'm Michelle Ellington, and I want to thank all of our attendees joining us today, which currently is 39 and counting. Today's webinar is being recorded. Both the recording and slides will be made available on the CFTA website. The presentation is estimated to run about 45 minutes, with the remaining time dedicated for Q&A. Feel free to send any questions during the presentation using the questions dialog box. Your question will be added to the queue and answered at the end or as time allows. I do want to extend a special thank you to today's presenter, Jade Freeman. Jade serves as a GIS manager for Michigan State University and will be presenting on how MSU is streamlining field crew operations using a variety of ArcGIS applications. Joining Jade with today's presentation will be a couple of his colleagues, Brian Kesey and Adam Lauber. Jade, thank you, and many thanks to Brian and Adam for presenting to all of us here today.
You're welcome. So as Michelle said, today we're going to be talking about how we're applying a variety of some Esri tools to really mobily enabling our field crews. So with that, we'll get started. Once again, my name is Jade Freeman. I'm a GIS manager here with MSU, Infrastructure Planning and Facilities, otherwise known as IPF. We're sort of the support side, operations side of the university. So my colleagues here are from our Landscape Services Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Lauber. I'm currently the Assistant Manager in the Landscape Services Department here at IPF.
And I'm Brian Kesey. I'm an analyst working in Landscape Services as well.
All right, so we're going to go through sort of some basic facts about MSU. 549 buildings here on the main East Lansing campus. There's quite a few more. I don't know the number off the top of my head. If you track buildings across all of our campus inside the state of Michigan and outside, that's about 23 million gross square foot on campus here. 5,200 acres on the main campus, approximately 2,000 developed acres, and of those approximately 1,600 are what we call managed acres. So that would be lawn mowing, plowing, hardscape. Adam is going to talk a little bit about our IPF organizational structure. We're kind of going through a transition period, and I'll let Adam say some more about that.
So our president put together kind of a strategy for the university, and one of the most recent initiatives is to advance our culture of high performance. And within IPF, which was the physical plan of Michigan State for many, many years, we are trying to transition our culture over time here. And one of the ways that we're going about that is transitioning from this hierarchical type structure to a more flat organization and a functional org chart. So if you think about the different departments that are within the physical plan or IPF, each one of those department leaders becomes pretty much their own business leader. And so the whole chain of command of asking for approvals and those types of things in the past, you'd have to go up through maybe 3 or 4 layers before you'd finally get the decision. And what we're trying to work towards is pushing that responsibility down in the organization and allow the business leaders to have more authority, make more decisions that are within their parameters, and to work through that. And so part of that effort is starting to change our daily routines and behaviors, which is really culture in its simplest form, and it's starting to work. We're about 6 to 8, 10 months in so far with this reorg, and really, a culture change is a 5 to 7 year process. But some of the things we're going to talk to you and show you today pertains to culture. It pertains to the daily routines and behaviors, and specifically in landscape services, how we're going about our tasks.
Yeah, I would just add, for me, as sort of the GIS program manager, I really view Adam and Brian as customers, and one of the interesting things has been able to sit back and watch this change, because so often in our organization we talk about KPIs and metrics, and you see, you know, people put out numbers like, you know, how many projects were on budget last year and how many projects were on schedule and stuff like that. And you know, you think about what that means to the average employee on a day-to-day basis, and those aren't the kind of numbers, data, metric, whatever you want to call them, that really help you change, you know, guide your decisions that you make every hour of every day. And I think some of the stuff that Landscape Services is doing is exciting for me, because I think you're really starting to actually see tools that actually can help staff make different decisions than they would have made last year, say.
The other thing we wanted to walk through a little bit, just to give some context, obviously for those here that are in higher education that are watching this webinar today, we've got problems, right? It's just too expensive to go to school, and that trend is unfortunately not stopping. It seems to keep going up. And so when you think about a little landscape services operation within a university, you know, we might be a half of a percent of the overall budget. But what can we do to own it and figure out how we can make a difference in this bottom line for the overall business? So that's been our focus, that's been our drive, and some of the things today we'll kind of talk about this management philosophy change of transitioning to this evidence-based management approach. Okay, go ahead. So when you think about your department, how many of you can really say that you're using evidence to make better management decisions? What we were doing is we were really leveraging people's experiences, their intuition of what they've done the prior year, and use that to make better informed decisions for the coming year. But we were never really looking at evidence. We were never really looking at the total number of trees that we have to prune. We never were looking at the amount of mulch that we really needed to install across the entire campus, how many labor hours we would need to do those kind of activities. You know, that's the kind of evidence that we just weren't doing. So you have to have experience, and you have to have the intuition. But what we're really trying to transition into now is adding evidence along with that whole process. And some of the things that you'll see today, I think, is starting to crack that open for us. So imagine you come in every day, or your workforce comes in, and if they're still using time clocks, or if it's digital now, good for you. We're working on the digitizing process for the time punching piece. But our folks come in every day and they punch the clock, and this idea of thinking about work as soon as you start it, and looking up at a dashboard to see where you have work that's needed for the day. Go out and you complete your shift, and at the end of the day you come back and you can see how your progress has helped move that needle going forward, and that's what we're trying to create here. So it's at a deeper level, we're trying to figure out what motivates employees, what is going to give them instant feedback for what they do on a daily basis, and really find out what that is for each individual. And unfortunately, there's no magic bullet here. I wish I could apply one management philosophy that would cover all 80 employees that we have, but there just isn't. And so we're trying to find that out by each crew, try to see what the crew and how that can motivate them, and we're having a little bit of success with that. Some of the feedback that we're getting from our folks is kind of reassuring. You know, it's that instant gratification piece of when they complete their activity on the iPad, and it no longer is displayed, and they're able to move on to the next one, and then come back at the end of the day and see how many they completed, how many tasks they completed for the day. Those are the kind of simple things that, unless you're a supervisor and you're able to work right along with your folks every single day, we're just not available enough to give that kind of gratification and feedback. And that's what this technology is starting to do at the human behavior level, which is kind of unique and kind of different here.
I'll just add that from my perspective, again, I've been involved with technology and GIS, as well as a number of other things. Our computerized maintenance management system, we're a famous customer. A Unifier, we're using a product called Unifier from Oracle for capital project management. And from where I sit, I often see technology forced down upon, you know, the people that are doing the work. And these are the kinds of tools that I think are different because they're actually tools that you can see from the quotes here that our employees are actually getting really excited about. I was in a meeting one day and one of the guys said, "This is the greatest thing since sliced bread," and he meant it wholeheartedly. So that was really pretty cool to be a part of. So I think that's the very interesting thing about these technologies. It's that at the lowest level of your organization, the people that are out there in the field doing the work, these are generating a lot of positive feedback, being embraced even by older members of the crew. So that's been really positive. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how we started. Talk a little bit about early wins. So this is actually an application. It happened shortly after the CFTA conference last year that was here at MSU. We had installed ArcGIS Portal and had it installed for about 2 weeks. Hadn't really done anything with it yet. And again, let me back up for a second and say that at the end of this, I'll give you sort of an overall perspective of the different tools and pieces that are involved. Right now, we're going to kind of focus on the end solutions, but this was a great early win for us because what happened is essentially I got a call from one of our landscape architects on a Tuesday, and they said, there's someone out there that's lodged a complaint against the university. They're claiming that the lighting levels along the river that runs through our campus aren't sufficient, and that it's leading to, basically a dangerous situation for staff and students that have to traverse those areas at night. And so to investigate, our staff were going to go out and basically measure lighting levels along the river throughout the night. So I got this call on Tuesday, and she said, we're hoping that you have something better for us than a bunch of paper maps and handwritten notes. And I said, well, I think we can do something. Let me, no promises, but let me see what I can do. So the following day on Wednesday, we basically set up a couple feature classes in a geodatabase, published those out as feature classes to ArcGIS Server, set up a map in ArcGIS Portal, brought those feature services in as layers, installed ArcGIS Collector on an iPad device, got basically a prototype system, kind of tested it out, seemed to work. So on Thursday, we basically were able to go into a demo/training session with the staff, and that night they were actually out collecting light readings along the river. So you can kind of see once they had all that data collected, they needed some way to look at it. So we were able to start using some ArcGIS dashboard to look at. So you'll see notes by type, average phototopic reading, average scotopic reading. So that's just all basically built right off the data in ArcGIS dashboard or operations dashboard. The smaller inset screenshot that you're seeing is actually the actual application that they use to actually go out and collect that. So it's as simple as basically indicating a location on the map, filling out a few data fields. We'll show you some more examples of this later on. And then basically that's it. It was really that simple. So really in like 3 days we were able to go from sort of a concept, idea, the identification of a need, to standing up a solution that the crew actually used. So that was pretty exciting for us. We've been using ArcGIS Server for a long time, and for those of you familiar with ArcGIS Server know that in versions, I think prior to 10.3 or possibly 10.2, ArcGIS Server included what they called a mobile content server, which was essentially a way for you to define an application and then use it, open that application up in ArcGIS for iOS or Android. A lot of people call that the green app. But to set those applications up, you're essentially building a JSON configuration file. It's tedious, it's painful, it's easy to make mistakes. There's no way that we could have done this in 2 days in that system. So using these new set of tools, I mean, we were able to put this up, almost overnight. So that was pretty exciting. So after we had that sort of early win with the lighting assessments, we were sort of at a point where, and I'm going to let Adam and Brian talk about this more, but we had developed the prior year a catch basin cleaning application that we were actually having one of our vendors use. So every summer we have a vendor come in and they clean catch basins on campus. And we had previously, what we had done is divided the campus into 3 zones and said, okay, in year 1 you clean everything in this zone, year 2 you clean everything in this zone, and in year 3 you would clean everything in the last zone. So I think on average, you know, each zone probably included about 2,500 structures that we were paying them to clean, and we knew, you know, just from our own experience that a lot of those structures really didn't need to be cleaned, but, you know, there's really no other way to do it. So what we did with Portal after the lighting assessment app is we actually set up an application that let our staff go out and inspect all of those structures, document whether they really needed to be cleaned or not, and what we found is at the end that we only needed to actually have that consultant come in and clean about 400 structures. So it was a pretty significant change. What you're seeing here is, again, the actual mobile collector application. So you're looking at a catch basin that's highlighted there on the map, and you're seeing at the bottom there, or over at the bottom on the right, we basically set up a related table. We call it inspection logs, so you can go and view past inspections, or you can go in and create a new inspection. So there's the inspection log. So that's, again, all the inspections that have been done on that catch basin that's highlighted there in the center of the screen. And then it was very simple for our staff to go in and document a new inspection. So all they had to do is basically fill out the date, the status, which was does it need to be cleaned or not, and any notes. They could also take a photo, attach that photo to it, and then the system would document the date that they did that. Is there, Brian, Adam, is there anything else you'd like to add about that? So putting that application together took up a little bit more time because we really split it into 2. So there was the inspections piece, and then we set up a similar application that our vendor would use to come in and actually document the catch basins that they cleaned. So here we're going to kind of talk about another sort of example of a way that we used to do things, and then talk a little bit about the way that we can do them now.
So the crew that does tree maintenance on campus is our arborist crew. They do prunings, they remove trees, they grind stumps, pretty much any service that might have to be done to a plant on campus, our tree crew does. Now in the past, we would get a project request for some work around a building or with a capital project. Our landscape architects would go out with our arborist crew supervisor, and they would do a walk. They would take a paper map out with a clipboard. They would mark up, you know, a Google image or a base map by paper and pencil. The landscape architect would then go back to their office and clean up their notes and provide a document back to the arborist crew that looks like the sheet that you have on your screen. It kind of blocks out areas that need to be focused on. It might note trees that are diseased that need to be removed, so on and so forth. They're identifying things as they go along. Then from there, the arborist crew supervisor takes those notes, takes the arborist crew back out into the field, and then relays that information to them, and then they begin their maintenance. So really we're talking about at least over the course of 2 or 3 days, 3 to 4 hours worth of work just in relaying and communicating maintenance needs on one particular project. When you start talking about this process happening over the course of 50 projects in the summer months, you're talking quite a large number of hours spent just on trying to communicate what needs to come down, what maintenance needs need to take place, and so on and so forth. So this helped us really identify, talking through this process with the arborist crew, we identified a lot of potential for streamlining this process, and that's what we'll show in the next couple slides here. So the example that we're going to see is the app in action, and then I'll talk about how we involved the crew as we move along. So I think I might just click through here. So on the iPad, the crews will take this out on their walkthrough. They'll take it out directly with the landscape architect. So anybody who is involved in a decision-making process from the design standpoint as well as the maintenance standpoint is doing this in one walkthrough. They'll look at this interface in the iPad. They'll select a tree as they walk through. On your right-hand side, you can see all of the attributes that we have, that we track in association with each plant record. So the disease, the genus, species, any date planted information. Further down, we have some DBH, some spread information as well. The crews can choose to add a new plant maintenance task status. A new plant maintenance task. They can choose from some predefined attributes that we worked through with them. So anything from pruning to cabling, air spading, they're able to change the value for each one of those attributes directly on the spot. Next, they can take photos within the app. This was in my office, not out on a walk, but so they can attach that photo directly to that plant record. Any notes that they might have, they can either type in, they can use iOS tools to dictate any notes that they have to into that field, and that'll get stored on a maintenance record, and then they post that record. Almost instantaneously, that updates. You can see the orange dot there in the middle of the screen. That is the signal to the crew that there's a maintenance task that needs to be completed on that plant. And so everybody involved in the process can see what maintenance tasks have to be undertaken that were decided upon through a walkthrough. So really we're combining all of the previous steps into one walkthrough and saving time that way. This next example, I want to talk about how the crew was actually involved in developing tools and adding features to this app. So we started off with the Arbor Screw, involving them determining what those fields that they should see on a regular basis, what those should be. So the air spading, the cabling, all those maintenance tasks that we as developers and office staff don't necessarily know. It was important for us to get in front of them and work with them to develop that list. We showed them the app, gave them an opportunity to play around with the tools, creating maintenance records on plants, and then they came back for a second time. And what you're looking at right here is a feature that they asked for after they took the app out in the field and started playing around. As part of their capital project maintenance work, they are required to put up tree protection fencing. This is a white fence, just a temporary fence that goes around all of our plant material for capital projects that we want to protect during the construction process.
I'm going to interject just for a second because, again, this is one of those things that, from where I sit, was really interesting because the crew had actually started using the application where we really set it up to just allow them to document maintenance tasks on trees. So you click a tree, you add a maintenance task, pretty simple. Well, as the sort of the developer, I was kind of, as rolling out this new program, I kind of was in the habit of, looking at the database, looking through the records on a day-to-day basis, and I just happened to see that, I started seeing notes, tree protection fencing, tree protection fencing, tree protection fencing. So I kind of went back to Brian and Madam and said, I'm seeing a lot of, they're using this to do something that we really didn't even anticipate. They've come up with a creative use of this tool that we hadn't thought about. Do you think it's worth going back to the crew and talking to them more about this? And that's really where we ended up doing it. But it was really interesting to see how creative they were in using the technology. I think there's this perception that, particularly older staff, maybe less technically savvy, that they're not going to be able to use these tools, and I just find all over the place examples like this where they actually, not only do they actively embrace and use these tools, but they come up with new and creative uses that we wouldn't have even thought about. So that was pretty exciting for me.
The added benefit is showing the staff that we as developers are able to adapt on the fly, add features that they're requesting quickly. It helped, in my opinion, build a ton of buy-in from them to see that their opinions and the things that they required in their daily maintenance lives were easy to add in and address in this app. So these crews, for this tool, they'll simply draw out a line, tap a few dots on the map. They can choose a status. Again, they can add any notes that they need to. They can post that, and then that feature, then that feature exists in the map for them to take care of, and it's a record that they have undergone the maintenance that was required.
So we're going to kind of go back and let Adam talk more about, you know, this culture change and how, and try to tie together how these tools are really starting to support that culture change.
So on the academic side of the university, the term action analytics is happening all over multiple universities right now. But so I was doing some research, and I kind of found a few articles on action analytics, and it talked about exactly what we're trying to do. So this wasn't really what we intended first on. We started to see how our staff were reacting to these tools, and we started to, and then we read this article, and it started to say, wait a minute, I think we're onto something here. I think we're starting to get aligned.
There's a name for what we're doing.
Exactly, you know. So that was reassuring to us that we're kind of on the right track, because it does take a lot of time, a lot of energy to develop these types of tools and deploy them to the workforce. But really what we're starting to see is this behavior change piece. You know, we're changing the way that staff perform their daily routine and behavior. And what we're trying to do is align our workforce to a bigger mission here. And this is just starting to kind of crack that surface. So if you haven't heard of action analytics before, I encourage you to kind of look at it. And on the academic side of the university, what they're using that concept for is to look at student success. So what classes, what type of grades that they're doing, and many freshmen want to change majors and move into a different major, and so they can use action analytic tools to look at what credit hours they've taken so far and completed, and how many of those would transfer into a new major, those types of things. And what we're trying to do on the support side of the university is kind of implement that same concept, but to the type of work that we do, and we think we're having some success with that. So go ahead and go to the next one.
I'm just going to interject too here. One of the unique aspects about these tools are, I think one of the things that they're doing is before this, you know, we would go out, we would do data or do maintenance work, for instance, on a tree. We would come back, and then we would basically report that to somebody who would record it into a database, and then somebody else would create reports upon that. And what you're seeing here is that we're sort of like merging all of those steps into one process. Or you know, the reporting is inherent in the data that you're creating. The managing the work is inherent in the way that we're managing it, and you'll start to see that here in a minute.
So this is kind of a rendering that we did in December, and we want to somehow, back to the alignment piece, right, is how do you align what the employee does on the day-to-day basis with the success of the overall organization? And we're trying to do that here. So we have this kind of idea that we are going to have a separate computer screen for each crew, and that computer screen will display the dashboard that will display metrics and data pertinent to what that crew does for the university. And we're not quite sure what phrase is going to be up above the different monitors yet, but it's got to be something that obviously relates to the bigger picture. So that's that idea, is we hire about 175 seasonal employees that come through the door every day, and for them to be able to look at a dashboard like this and understand what they do on a daily basis and how that aligns with the bigger picture of MSU, that's what we're trying to get after. It's a big lofty goal, big concept, but we think, you know, that's where we need to go, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's just kind of the concept in December, and I put together a kind of a business proposal, and for I don't know, less than $5,000, we were able to purchase a system like this, and for the results that we are seeing, we can pay back $5,000 in a day. I mean, really, it's really changing and making us much more efficient. We're eliminating a lot of the paper process, which is really waste in the overall value-added process, and we're starting to see some really good results.
These next few images are just screenshots of the various dashboards that will be put on each one of those monitors for the different crews. So this is litter management. So our trash teams are, you know, again, from my perspective, I wonder how these guys ever did their job. You know, we have, I think it's somewhere in the realm of 500 trash receptacles across campus, and how does one guy, how are they able to keep track of which receptacles they emptied yesterday, when those receptacles will need to be emptied again, what receptacles need to be emptied on Wednesday, Thursday, etc. You know, and I think they did a reasonable job without a whole lot of assistance. But now we can actually show them, based upon characteristics of the receptacle, how big is it, how frequently, you know, is it used, how many times have we emptied it in the past, over what time period, and so now we can actually make those things turn up, show up on the map automatically. So they can go out, they empty their trash can, they come in tomorrow, and the map looks different. You know, they didn't have to go create a new map, they didn't have to do anything else. It's just built into the system. This one is, again, back to the Arbor Screw, so showing how many open plant maintenance tasks we have, how many that the crew has completed today. I think you'll see a quote later on from one of our guys talking about how it's motivating to see, you know, how much the volume of work that you did today. I think it's generating a lot of pride, you know, to be able to come in and say, wow, do you know that we did this many tasks? Do you know that we did 170 maintenance tasks, you know, prunings this month? And that we've done almost 1,000 since the beginning of the year. That's pretty incredible. Here again is basically talking about a specific activity, tree trimmings. And this was kind of interesting because it's illustrating some, obviously you'll see for the 2016 line, it looks like we're much more efficient, doing, you know, at least easily probably twice the work that we did a few years ago. But we're starting to kind of circle back and say, you know, maybe we need to look at that number a little bit more to try to really figure out what this means.
What we're seeing happening is, so in addition to the tree crew who does trimmings in this case, our gardening staff does some small-scale prunings and that sort of thing. Well, because this app is so easy for everybody to use and it's accessible to all of our crews, the gardeners have started reporting their prunings also, and so we see double the production on this graph. The previous year was just reported by just the tree crew, so we're combining a whole bunch of data sets and trying to do some analysis on the previous year versus what we're able to collect now, and so we're going to be talking in the future about how to address that kind of
yeah. The one thing that we know for certain, though, is that we are now able to document work that we were not able to document in years past. So it's giving us a greater visibility into, you know, what we're doing, how much we're doing in a month, how much we're doing. You know, before there's just a lot of stuff that just falls through the cracks, that, you know, it takes too much time to report it, so we don't, and therefore we lose visibility into, you know, what activities are our staff doing and how quickly are they doing them. Okay, so I'm going to give you this. This is actually right off of Esri's website, but it kind of gives you a good overall picture of the different components of the system. So we've got ArcGIS server. We're actually moving from a single ArcGIS server to a clustered ArcGIS server installation. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but one of the things that deploying these tools to such a wide or large number of people and deploying these dashboard applications has done is it's really driving the use of these ArcGIS services like we've never seen before, and so to scale up and accommodate that usage, and be able to provide a fast, stable, user experience. We're having to basically scale up our whole ArcGIS server installation. So on top of that, we've got ArcGIS Portal. We're running that on a separate virtual machine, VMware. We're running everything on VMware, I should mention. But so we've got Portal that sits on there, and Portal is really, if you don't know anything about it, is really just essentially it's ArcGIS Online, but it allows you to host it on site, which is important for MSU. We have a lot of very strict policies about what we can do with our data, where we can put it. We can't just, we can't put it all over the cloud. We've got to be very careful about where we're putting those things. So Portal is a very attractive option for us because it allows us to keep all that stuff on site here, hosted at the university. And then I mentioned a little bit, the mobile content server in earlier versions of ArcGIS, and it was very exciting to be able to actually deploy an iPad application. We've had a lot of success with that. Anytime someone new would come into my office and say, Jade, I want to build a new app to do this, I would just cringe, because setting those applications up, even making changes, let's say we change the address of the URL of our ArcGIS server, those were tedious changes to make. You had to be very careful. There was no GUI tools to help you really. So when Portal came along, it essentially allows you to build these applications by all you're really doing is defining a web map. So you specify, the base map. If anybody's used ArcGIS Online, they know what I'm talking about. You bring in the layers that you want to use, and as long as it includes some sort of editable layer, you can open it up in ArcGIS Collector. But the advantage is that thing is also now a web map, so not only can you pull it up on your mobile device, you can pull it up in a web browser, you can pull it up in ArcMap. So just, the ability to use that thing that you've created is really, really good. Yeah, so starting to wrap up here. It looks like we're getting about where we should be. So lessons learned, considerations, again, ArcGIS server. We started 2 years ago, or our first deployment of ArcGIS server was a single instance. We've been running a single instance now for probably about 6 years. I would say we're probably serving close to 60 services, different services between all of our underground utilities, base map layers, tiled services, operational layers, and editable feature classes, about 60 services. But we're just, the wide number of people and different applications consuming those, we really hit the limit of what we could do. Is get to the point where the map took forever to refresh. We were seeing services crash all the time. We just really needed to scale up. So like I said, we've gone to a clustered ArcGIS server site. We've got 6 machines in the site right now. Actually, we've divided it into 2 sites. Basically, public-facing services are on one site that's running on actually a single machine right now, because we're only running tiled services off of that. And then we've got all of our internally facing secured services, which would be mostly our operational layers, editable feature class layers, layers that are supporting operations dashboard. All those are running on a 5-server cluster, clustered instance of ArcGIS server right now, and we've seen much better performance, much better stability, and much easier to manage as well. One of the other interesting challenges is because we're an educational site for Esri, we've got an educational license. I think Esri, to some extent, is still trying to figure out how to take these tools like ArcGIS Pro and Portal and get them into not the educational side of the university, but really the facilities, the maintenance side of the university. So when I first requested a license for ArcGIS Portal, which, if you read all the literature out there, it's clearly called out as an extension to ArcGIS Server. So when I said to our license administrator here on campus, I need a license that has this extension called Portal, she had no idea what I was talking about. So it took us quite a while to get with Esri and figure that out and get the license file that we needed. We're also kind of dealing with a situation where the university is entitled to a single 50-user license through our site license, as I understand it, but yet we've got multiple groups here on campus that are wanting to use Portal, and so we're trying to, working with Esri to try to figure out how to navigate those kinds of issues. Probably most recently, I think a lot of people were excited when they announced ArcGIS Pro and what it would mean for us. We're extremely excited about being able to use these new vector tile layers, but of course you can only publish those through ArcGIS Pro. Well, again, even though ArcGIS Pro is clearly marketed as an ArcGIS desktop, when you go to your site license administrator and say, I need ArcGIS Pro, they don't even really know how to process that because it's not actually, it is a desktop application, but it's not part of the normal suite of desktop applications. It's actually licensed through Portal. So trying to figure out how to get the right license file through our licensing portal and get that installed to Portal has been somewhat of a challenge, and as such we've had to sort of drop that to a lower priority. I think what's worked well for us, and I won't claim that we intentionally handled it this way. We kind of fell into this approach, but a phased approach, solve small problems first. So we talked about, the lighting assessments example, and once we'd proven success with that, we said, well, let's apply this to a little bit bigger problem, catch basin inspection and cleaning. Let's change the way that that we're managing that whole program, and then build some tools to support that. And now we're getting to a point where we've tackled a number of our landscape services crews, and our most recent project is working on basically a project management system for landscape services. So not project management in the traditional sense of showing you Gantt charts and stuff like that, resource loading, but being able to describe the limits of a project, being able to describe different work areas within that project and the things that need to be done, and have that all visually managed through this map interface out in the field at the point of work. Celebrate early wins. We've talked a little bit about working with our crews, talking about the success. One of the things that Adam and Brian have done is actually worked with our communications group to produce some sort of promotional videos that are out there on the IPF website. If you read on the CFTA website, the description for this webinar, there's a link to a video that was produced, and I think that's pretty exciting for our staff to see their name out there, to see them being promoted like that. So again, it just helps drive their embracing this technology and these tools. One of the things that we knew early on, this is kind of again, it's one of those sort of interesting stories, and a lot of this stuff, I would like to claim that we had this big vision in mind, but a lot of this stuff really kind of started to fall together. I came back from the CFTA conference and pretty excited about this operations for dashboard, and immediately showed it to Adam, because I knew Adam's sort of a big vision guy and would immediately see this, and he said, it's funny, Jade, because we've been trying to figure out a way to use Prezi to put together a presentation that will just run on an endless loop and put it on a monitor out in the crew's break room. And I said, well, let's take a look at this, and kind of showed him the lighting assessment and the dashboard we developed, and it just kind of took off from there. But one of the things that we've had to do is figure out what metrics are important to the crew at the beginning of the day. What metrics or what map do they need to see at the beginning of the day versus the end of the day? How is that different than maybe the view that the manager needs to get the insight that he needs into the work? And finally, we've been talking to mobile device strategy, management philosophy. I'm going to let Adam talk about this.
So I think it's really important, because you're going to be deploying these kind of devices to a workforce that maybe only looks at their email once a week. A group of folks that still have flip phones for a cell phone instead of a smartphone. That's the demographic that you're working with for these things. And so I think it's really important that you think about allowing your staff to take these devices home with them. Allow your staff to take them home. Let their kids play with them, maybe look at apps and things like that, because the more that your employees can become comfortable with that device at their hip, I think the better results you'll end up getting. One quick story is an individual took it home, used it for hiking, came back in and said, hey, I wonder if we could use, I really like this feature in this hiking app that I have. I wonder if we could apply that to how we do projects on campus. So I just think that you really need to think about allowing your staff to take these devices home with you. Obviously have a policy in place, those kind of things if damages occur. But that's the kind of approach that we've taken, and it's worked out really well. Lastly, wireless plans, device acquisition. We are currently trying to figure out the best cost advantage for us to deploy about 87 iPhones out to our workforce, and I'm working through all of that right now. Obviously, under a state contract as a university, if we provide devices as an employer, versus providing a reimbursement to each employee and have them buy their own device. We're working through all of those types of things right now. But what we're starting to see is right now we're spending about $55,000 on communication devices in our department. And by switching to an employer-based plan, we might be able to get that down to about $45,000. So you just got to look at the evidence. You got to look at what is the data telling you and how you can use that to leverage and make better decisions. That's it.
All right, well, I think we're over the time limit that we're supposed to be, so thank you for your time. Thank you for watching today. Here's some contact information if you want to follow up with questions or get in touch with us later on. But again, thank you for watching.
Oh, thank you. And we do have quite a few questions still, so you are not off the hook yet.
That's great.
In fact, we have quite a few piling in, so I'll just hit them out one at a time. First question is, what program are you using for their employee dashboard?
So we're using ArcGIS Operations Dashboard, and it, of course, is entirely dependent on the way that you define a dashboard is really you define a web map in Portal or ArcGIS Online, and those, of course, are in turn dependent upon ArcGIS services from your own ArcGIS server, services from ArcGIS Online, etc. So, but the actual application that we're using right now is ArcGIS Operations Dashboard.
Great. Next question. How does this integrate with your work order management system? And how do managers that aren't looking at the map know that there is a work order?
Great question. So with our landscape services folks, they've got a pretty well-defined work order structure, financial structure, and they've mapped those to geographic zones on campus, and we didn't show it here, but every lawn panel, every piece of concrete, every piece of sidewalk, every piece of pavement has essentially a funding source attached to it. So they've sat down with their customer base and said, who's going to pay for maintenance on this? Who's paying for maintenance on this piece of sidewalk? Who's paying for mowing on this lawn panel? And so what we're able to actually do, like if you look at something like plant maintenance, we know that a plant or a tree sits in a lawn panel. We know the funding source of that, and we know that we can then map that to the work order. So what we were doing in the background is letting the database, we're on Oracle Spatial, so we're leveraging those spatial relationships to associate the work order with the task. And so at the end of the day, when the crew comes in, we can actually display them a task completed summary by work order. Now we're not creating work orders from this system. We're not, those all have to be set up inside Famous, and then but what we're doing is tying them together. But once they're tied together through the work order, we can actually build a link. Our applications group has built a site that you provided a work order, and it can give you all the details of that work order. So it creates a great marriage of the tools where on the map you can click on that thing on the map, click a link, have it take you to their tool where it basically gives you all the details of that work order. And then with this project management application that we're working on, the ultimate vision really is to, if we define the work order structure up front, so that we know where a work order should go, that when you create a project, it'll create a work order. When you create a work area underneath that project, it'll create a work order, a child work order for that work area, and then when you create a line item on that work area, it'll create a child work order for that line item in Famous, so that you don't actually have to do that initial step of setting up your work order structure ahead of time. We're not there yet, but that's sort of the long-range vision where we're going with that. But it would really enable Adam and Brian a financial insight into their projects that they don't have today.
The other app that we're looking at acquiring right now is AppTree, which is basically an application that you can download on a smartphone. It's basically a view right into Famous. So we're trying to get rid of the paper time cards, and have our staff enter their materials and equipment and labor time right on their smart device, as throughout the day, rather than waiting to the end of the day.
Great. Okay, next question is about your trash services. Are you entering data for every trash can, or is this automated to some extent, say by route?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So like Jay talked about earlier, we have 500 plus litter receptacles on campus. And before, we were having about 20 different people in each gardener within their area responsible for the litter receptacles in their area. And when you look at it holistically, you had 20 separate people changing out litter receptacles. And each one of them had a routine in place, whether that's every Monday they go around to all of their receptacles and check them whether they need to or not. But that information wasn't really stored anywhere aside from in their heads. And so what this application has allowed us to do is assign a routine or a frequency of service to each receptacle. So what we've done is we've deployed about 5 iPads out to 2 employees in a group. They've gone around through all 500 receptacles, and they are given the ability to change the frequencies based upon the use. So they can indicate whether it's a quarter full, half full, 3/4 full, whether they change the bag or not, if the receptacle needs to be repaired or not. They're able to do those kinds of simulations on it, and then when they post that, if they've changed the frequency, so maybe the litter receptacle is set up for a weekly rotation, and they get there and it doesn't need to be serviced, they'll move that to a bi-weekly or to a every 3-week type service plan. When that posts, then the next week, or when they open up the app, the only receptacles that actually display on the map are the ones that actually are due for service. So you've taken from going around to 500 separate ones to now only about 100 that we actually really need to do. So instead of having 20 people do that task, now I only need to have about 2 that do it.
The next thing that we're looking at too, and I mean nothing in production, but is using the schematic data, or not schematic, transportation data sets to actually do I think it's the vehicle routing problem analysis to say, okay, we know that here's the 200 receptacles that need to be serviced today, so let's run these through this routing problem and figure out the optimal distribution of tasks per number of crews. And then eventually, long term, probably even looking at that to say, do we really need 5 crews? Is it better to have 5 crews of 2, or is it better to have 2 crews of 5, whatever. But it's kind of interesting, but we're in the early phases of that. There's a lot of data that has to go into that, a lot of thinking about vehicle capacities, making sure that our underlying routing network is complete and detailed enough. Dealing with these guys are driving a little S10, I think, so can they drive on sidewalks, not drive on sidewalks, those kind of things. So there's a lot more that needs to be done there, but it's an exciting area to be looking at for sure.
Excuse me. So along those same lines, are you recording the activity for each trash can, or each trash can dumped, or do they record activity against multiple locations and cans?
No, right now it's they're working in a team of 2, so one person's driving, one person's running the iPad. They pull up to the receptacle, one person empties it, the other person completes the service record, basically documenting that they serviced it. Like Adam said, if they need to adjust the frequency because maybe they're there too early and it doesn't really need to be serviced, they can do that. So one person's sort of acting as a data recorder, one person's acting and doing the work.
Okay, thank you. Regarding ArcGIS Collector, what limitations have you found for landscape management, and how readily was the technology adopted by your staff?
So what we're finding out, the limitations, we've got a few. One is the knowledge base that our staff has as far as mobile devices. We talked a little bit about flip phones before being used heavily throughout our maintenance staff. We deal with an older staff that doesn't necessarily have a smartphone in their hands, and so there's a lot of learning curve as far as teaching them simple troubleshooting techniques out in the field. Is your Wi-Fi on? Are you using cellular data? And trying to identify any gaps that might exist there. How do you sign into your own account so that we can track who's doing what maintenance tasks? Those are limitations that we as office staff spend a lot of our resources on troubleshooting and getting those maintenance staff members comfortable with the device. We find the more comfortable a user is with that device, the less we see them, which makes sense, right? So that's our first line of defense, making sure that we have enough staff capable to troubleshoot for them and make them feel that they're not just spinning their wheels trying to use this app and it's slowing them down significantly. The other major thing that we found is network connectivity. I kind of hit on that before. All of our devices are 4G LTE connected devices through the Verizon network. Now, as our staff gets close to buildings, the devices start to pick up on some Wi-Fi signal, which might be weak because the campus doesn't have a campus-wide outdoor wireless network, so we run into issues there. Jade alluded to before some server capacity issues that are being addressed as more and more users hit those services. So those are kind of the major roadblocks that we've ran into so far.
Great. What about your GPS accuracy with the iPads? Is it good enough? And what projects haven't your iPads worked well on?
We generally are just using the GPS to get us close out in the field. So the device itself, of course, is 10-meter accuracy or so, but we've spent so much time on the back end making sure that our base maps are accurate and complete that a lot of our staff just use landmarks based on the base map once their GPS has taken them in the ballpark.
The tree crew has been using the GPS enabled to walk the limit of the tree protection fencing. So they'll select, tree protection fence and then install, and then they'll physically just walk around the tree or walk a perimeter or something like that, and then they post where they walk through, and that's been accurate enough for them. So it's either two way you can do it.
Yeah, I would say though that probably to the person's point though, we're not using this to collect features that require a high degree of accuracy. Or like with the project management, we've said, well, maybe the initial definition of the project area can be done in collector, where again, because our base map is so detailed that you can be fairly accurate or accurate enough, but later on we'll come back with survey equipment and actually capture an accurate location and adjust those boundaries or those work areas. So, but we're not using it. We're not capturing benchmarks. We're not capturing road edges and side edges and stuff like that. So, but again, a lot of the Brian said it. We've put so much effort into developing a very detailed and accurate base map that. For a lot of stuff, we don't really even rely on the GPS because we can be as accurate or probably even more accurate by just using the, clicking on the screen, using the long press and hold, which kind of brings up a magnified view of the map, and placing features that way.
So do your trash collectors all have iPads and track each collection throughout the day, or is that tracked some other way?
We've got right now a bank of 4 or 5 iPads that are available for general use through our department, and so on the days that they go out and trash collect, which are generally like a Monday, Friday, Monday, Thursday, depending on the weather, they will just check those out. And we have, I think, 4 crews that are running right now, and so we've got enough devices to keep them covered. The long-range plan Adam kind of alluded to before is that all of our full-time and 9-month temporary staff will have their own iOS device, whether that's an iPad or an iPhone in their hands that they'll be able to use these apps, and so we won't have to rely quite as much on those shared devices. But we're probably a month or so away from that.
Okay. Now, are you guys running Famous?
Yes.
Okay, so you talked about the work orders, but do actions in GIS trigger work order creations in Famous?
Not currently. That's where we want to be someday. Again, with like the project management, so the idea is that eventually, you know, we'll have a basically parent project or work order for all landscape services sort of site project work, and then what we'd like to get to, and we've actually developed the database routines and procedures and put these in place against our test database, but is so that when you create the project on the map, that it'll actually go create a parent work order underneath that project in Famous. And then as you add additional details to the project, project areas, work areas, and line items, that it'll actually create work orders on the fly in Famous as you do that, and then automatically tie the two together. You know, because ultimately we want to be at the point where, you know, so you go out, you set up the job, but eventually a crew is going to go out there and let's say it's to, I don't know, reseed an area. So they're going to look at this work area and say, okay, I need to reseed here. Well, the first thing that we want them to be able to do is use the AppTree product to say, okay, I need to issue seed to the job. I need to issue topsoil to the job. Well, if that work order is not already there, then that's going to be a problem, you know, or it won't be at the right level of to give us the right level of detail. So that's sort of the vision. We're not doing that currently, but we think that it should be possible.
Great. What about time tracking? Have you integrated that with the system, or are you moving in that direction at all?
Not in terms of them actually keeping track of how much time they spent on a particular activity. But again, one of the things, you know, right now, because of the way our division is really set up, these folks are doing a lot of end-of-the-day time cards where they're coming in recording the tasks that they've done. So what we're trying to do is basically tie the activities that they've done to the work order that they should use when they go in and fill out their time card. Right now, I mean, again, I'm constantly amazed that they can come even close to being accurate, you know, to keep track of everything that they did throughout the day, you know, and those work orders change based upon where you were on campus, the type of activity that you're doing. But to be able to come in at the end of the day and have them look at a dashboard that tells them, you know, you, Joe Walsh, did, you know, 5 plant trimmings in, and you should use this work order, you know, because then I think they can do a much better job of being able to accurately fill out their time card, which is, you know, in turn important because we're going out to our customers across campus and saying, this is how much you need to fund us for next year. This is how much it costs to, you know, do all this maintenance work for you. So being able to make that, improve the accuracy of that is important.
What about tracking equipment or material? For example, are you calculating the area and volume of plant beds for estimating supply needs?
We are so building upon that robust base map that we have. We just this past winter purchased a bark blowing machine to really automate and improve our efficiency for placing mulch on campus. The human method of shovels and pickup trucks and placing it would only allow us to place about 200 to 2,500 cubic yards of mulch. And based upon our 47 acres of beds that we have on campus, we wanted to, at a 3-inch level, we wanted to place about 6,000 yards of mulch annually. And so we used the GIS tools to kind of come up with a game plan for that. The bark blower that we purchased was sized based upon that need. And we just rolled that out here in 2015, and we met our goal. We placed about 6,000 yards of mulch on campus in one season. So it was kind of back to that evidence piece, right, of looking at how much area you have, how much supplies you need to acquire. We were able to bid out 6,000 yards of mulch rather than buying 500 at a time. We got a much cheaper price per cubic yard, and it worked out really, really well for us. So how we'll do that in the future is we'll have access to AppTree, you know, the app that's basically a portal into Famous, and our folks, as they place mulch on campus, they will immediately be able to issue out 20 cubic yards to the appropriate work order right from their smartphone.
Well, that's some great ROI tracking. I'm sure a lot of us are going to be interested in seeing your results.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a PDF doc. I did a little business plan for that, so I'd be happy to share that with folks. For 30 plus years, we placed mulch with a loader in the back of a pickup and drove it over to a location on campus and spread it by hand. And literally within one summer, we were able to triple that production with the use of a bark blowing machine.
Wow, that's excellent. Well, how about the organizational change? You know, you mentioned that it's really been a pivotal point for your organization. Have you run into any issues in this regard?
Yeah, we have, right? So a hierarchical structure, which is how almost, probably 100% of physical plant structures are structured right now, are very clear with what the rules are. And when you change an organizational structure, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of unanswered questions, there's just a lot of stuff that comes up. And I would say that right now, IPF as a whole is really stressed right now, going through that change. But if you look at any management books, change in itself is hard for people because, for 30 years they've perfected the way that they do their job, back to that daily routine and behavior. And so we've had to be really, really patient with the change. We've had to be very specific about what the vision is. We've reinforced alignment immensely. I feel that across the division, each department is really working for a common strategy within the organization, where in the past we really didn't have that common alignment. And I think that's really important. So now, once we know that within the Department of Landscape Services, now we can work on that alignment all the way down through each of our crew. But it's not easy. It's a 5 to 7 year process. So if you're right in the middle of it, or you're just starting culture change, don't be frustrated. Learn from how other organizations have done it. But as a leader, you've got to just communicate much more than what you may have ever done in the past.
Okay, and the last two questions are coupled. They're technical. The first one is, what database solutions are you using for your enterprise geodatabases?
We're using Oracle, Oracle Spatial. In fact, the campus actually just this year added an enterprise license for Spatial, or a site license for Oracle Spatial. So that's a big plus to us. We've been paying that licensing fee for some time. We're using another tool, Munsis from Open Spatial, and that's where we do probably 90% of like our base map, underground utilities, building footprints, roads, sidewalks, stuff like that. That mapping, it's a CAD-based GIS solution. Our roots are in the CAD world, so when we've stumbled across that solution, it just made a lot of sense to us. We're able to be, so much more efficient drawing and managing, complex polygons, lines, arcs, that kind of thing in that CAD environment. But the ability to push it into an OpenGIS compliant data structure in Oracle, and then plug the Esri stack into that for the the dissemination to iPads and websites and web apps, web maps. It's been a great solution for us. But yes, our primary database platform is Oracle Spatial.
Okay, and then the last question, which is a very important one, is, are you the maintainer of all of this, the technologies, the development QA environment, as well as the production tier for your ArcGIS server sites and portal?
Right now, yes. I mean, I work in a department called Facility Information Services, which is one of those business areas of IPF. We do a lot of work with folks like Adam from Landscape Services, our telecom department, and right now we're pretty much doing most of the maintenance. Now we have a computer systems and networking group, so they're maintaining the underlying VM infrastructure, the networking. They are in turn working with our central IT department, turning over maintenance for switches and firewalls and things like that. And eventually, we want to move most of our commodity type services over to our central IT group. So that would be like, for instance, moving our storage and VM infrastructure over to their management. My level of responsibility really starts at the application server level, so ArcGIS. I'm not managing the underlying Windows environment. I'm managing the ArcGIS server environment on top of that. I'm managing the ArcGIS portal installation. I do, most of the development for landscape services, at least currently, on putting together at least the initial take at these web maps. One of the interesting things about ArcGIS portal is I think it makes developing a map more accessible to more people. Suddenly you get into a situation where I don't have to create every map. I can have, Adam can have a trained student that can start putting maps together for him. Litter management, one of the things that we didn't really talk about, but as those staff, as they're out there and they're emptying these receptacles, if they think that maybe that someone ought to take a look at the design of that receptacle, or maybe the design of the site around the receptacle, they can flag that thing. So that's a great feature, really cool. A lot of good feedback in the meeting, and then the first question they asked was, well, how do I find all those? So we took the web map, basically did a save as, put a filter on that layer to say where needs design review equals true, and voila, they had their map. So that was pretty easy. So I think it takes some of that responsibility, but right now I'm doing most of that. But our organization, and part of this change, the IT folks are looking at moving towards ITIL, which is a framework for managing IT services, information technology services. So as part of that, I think we'll see a change. I can't tell you exactly what it'll look like, but I think it'll change. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it has to change. I mean, that's what we're all using this technology for, is to support change and to be able to analyze change. Yep. We went over, but I had to. There are too many good questions coming in. And, you started with over 40 attendees, and we're still at 30. So you had everybody's ear. It was a phenomenal presentation. And, I just want to really thank you all again so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
Great, great. Glad to have you. So with that, I'll go ahead and finalize today's webinar. And again, thank you to all of our attendees who joined us and stuck with us. So 15 minutes past the hour. The next webinar is going to be with Bob Nichols with Washington State University, and he'll be presenting on mobile crowdsourcing of university facilities mapping. Please check out the other webinars in this Geotech Showcase series. They're all listed on the CFTA website at www.cfta.org.